I still remember the exact moment my career was ended. The HR manager slid the paper across the table, avoided eye contact, and said the words that changed my life: "You're overqualified for this position. You won't be happy here." I thought it was a joke. I had just spent 3 months going through interviews, case studies, and background checks. I had turned down 2 other offers because this company was my dream. But it wasn't a joke. 5 minutes later, security was walking me out of the building like I was a problem they needed to remove. What they didn't know was that this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. Before we go further, if you love real PowerShift stories like this, take a second to like the video and subscribe to REVANGE CAST. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me tell you how being called overqualified turned into the biggest comeback of my life. At the time, I was 32 years old with 2 master's degrees and almost 10 years of experience in operations strategy. I had worked for a consulting firm, helped companies cut costs, improve systems, and grow faster. But after a merger, my entire department was laid off. I wasn't desperate for any job. I wanted stability. I wanted to work somewhere long-term, build something real, and finally stop jumping from project to project. That's when I found them. A mid-sized manufacturing company that was growing quickly but struggling behind the scenes. Their processes were outdated, their costs were rising, and employee turnover was high. To me, it wasn't a problem. It was an opportunity. I prepared a full improvement plan before the final interview. I showed them how they could save millions within 2 years. The CEO seemed impressed. The operations director kept nodding. They even said, "We need someone exactly like you." I left that meeting feeling confident for the first time in months. Then the email came. "We regret to inform you that you are overqualified for the role and may not find it challenging enough." I was shocked. But I still asked for feedback. That's when I learned the truth. One of the senior managers had said, "She's too experienced. She'll try to change everything. And she'll probably want my job." They didn't reject me because I wasn't good enough. They rejected me because I was a threat. That moment hurt more than the rejection itself. Not because I lost the job, but because I realized how many companies fear improvement more than failure. For a few days, I was angry. Then something changed. I opened the improvement plan I had created for them and started reviewing it again. If I could see the problems from the outside, imagine what I could do if I worked with companies that actually wanted to grow. That was the moment I stopped looking for a job and decided to build something of my own. I started small. A laptop, a tiny home office, and a simple website offering operations consulting for small and mid-sized businesses. At first, it was slow. I reached out to companies, sent cold emails, offered free audits just to prove my value. Most ignored me. A few said no. But one company said yes. Within 6 months, their costs dropped by 18%. That result brought referrals. Referrals brought more clients. Within 2 years, I wasn't a solo consultant anymore. I had a small team. Then a bigger one. Then a full firm specializing in operational turnaround for struggling companies. And here's the interesting part. The more companies we helped, the more I started recognizing the same pattern. Poor leadership decisions. Fear of change. Managers protecting their positions instead of improving performance. Exactly like the company that rejected me. 3 years after that rejection, my firm had worked with over 40 businesses. Our reputation was strong. Investors started noticing us. That's when one of them brought me a file and said, "You might find this interesting." I opened it, and froze. It was the company that had called me overqualified. Their growth had stalled. Costs were out of control. Employee turnover was worse than ever. They had lost several major clients. And now they were looking for investors to avoid bankruptcy. For a moment, I just stared at the numbers. Everything I had warned them about in my interview plan had happened. The investor asked me a simple question. If you were in charge, could you fix this? I took a deep breath and said, yes. What happened next moved faster than I expected. Instead of consulting for them, our investment group made an offer to acquire a controlling stake. It wasn't about revenge. It was business. The company had strong products, good employees, and real potential. It just needed leadership that wasn't afraid of change. The deal went through 6 months later. And just like that, I walked back into the same building I had been escorted out of. But this time, my name was on the leadership announcement. The reactions were unforgettable. Some employees recognized me immediately. Others didn't realize who I was until the all-hands meeting. I stood in front of the entire company and said something very simple. I'm not here to blame the past. I'm here to build the future. And anyone who wants to improve, grow, and be part of that future is welcome to stay. But leadership changes were necessary. The senior manager who once called me a threat had been one of the main reasons the company resisted change. His department had the highest costs and lowest performance. When we reviewed the numbers, the decision was clear. This time, HR sat across from him. And the reason wasn't personal. It was performance. Over the next year, we rebuilt the company from the inside. Outdated systems were replaced. Decision-making became data-driven. Employees were trained instead of blamed. High performers were promoted. Toxic management was removed. Within 18 months, the company became profitable again. Within 3 years, revenue had doubled. But the most satisfying moment wasn't the financial success. It was when a longtime employee came to me and said, "This is the first time in years that it feels like leadership actually wants us to succeed." That's when I realized something important. Being called overqualified wasn't an insult. It was someone else admitting they were afraid of growth. Today, when people ask about my career, I tell them this: sometimes rejection isn't about your ability. Sometimes it's about someone else's insecurity. If you've ever been told you're too much, too ambitious, too experienced, or too different, don't shrink yourself to fit small thinking. Find a place where growth isn't a threat. Or build one. And if you stay patient, focused, and consistent, one day you might walk back into the room that rejected you, not to prove them wrong, but because you've outgrown their limits. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been rejected for something that later became your strength? Share your story in the comments. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs motivation today, and subscribe to REVANGE CAST for more powerful comeback stories like this. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's growing so much that the past can't hold you anymore.